Bandung 2 presents the After Dark Debates.
Critical discussions on contemporary issues.
There is nothing that tells me as a Muslim, that Allah has told me as a Muslim, to live in a system where the kuffar have authority and be happy with it. Sorry, it's the other way around. Just like what we have now on this earth. We have a system, a white supremacist system, that has attained this power on this earth through all forms of genocide, debauchery, wickedness, and all forms of evil that even Pharaoh would raise his eyebrow to, right? Now we need to replace this, but we're not replacing it with another system of debauchery and wickedness. No, we need to replace a system with justice and equality and freedom restricted, where the people, even if they don't want to be Muslim, they have their rights to live their life. And we need to make them aware this is what Islam is about. Islam.
Yeah, can I pick you up on this? Because it's interesting. I mean, essentially, are you saying, I mean, because I'll tell you my position on this, is that I feel, although the dominant contemporary world order today is white supremacy racism, that this is just a particular manifestation of a much more general phenomenon that could take place at any time in history, past, present or future, and that is supremacism per se. Now what I mean by that is that we could envisage what might be called black supremacy. In fact, Fuller talks about this. He just says this is a non-functional, non-existent system in the contemporary world.
Sheikh Anta Diop spoke about it. He
Precisely.
said, Sheikh Anta Diop said, look, the system I'm living under now, then my ancestors were subjecting their ancestors to it.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. So this, I mean, this is if like empirical proof that supremacism can take many forms. And one possible form, I mean, if we go back to what was said maybe half an hour ago, is that Islam too, which has 1200 years legacy, could have been a supremacism itself. Islamic or Muslim supremacism, in which there wasn't the justice that the Quran and Allah Ta'ala laid down, i.e. the female wasn't given the rights that Allah and His Messenger laid down, that the classes that weren't supposed to exist, that came into existence, was an affront to what Allah and His Messenger had brought. That racism, in the sense of a colour based system of unjust discrimination, picking up on the point you mentioned earlier about discrimination being an essential component of existence, that you have to discriminate in order to exist, that wasn't something that Allah and His Messenger brought. So when you're talking about this new system, I mean, maybe we're saying the same thing here. I'm just teasing this out for clarification. That I'd like to distinguish between what I call Islamic supremacy and what might be referred to as Islam too, or Muslim supremacy. What I mean by that is I don't want to see people who carry around a club card of being Muslim, i.e. they're wearing a label or saying I'm a Muslim, yeah, so I'm in authority. Rather, I want to see Allah Ta'ala in authority, because He's the supreme. And maybe what the Quran is pointing to is the creation of a system which doesn't really look too much like a system, in the sense that it's not top-down structured, it's not a pyramid. Rather, it's something flat and something pluralistic that makes space, as you say, for the non-Muslim to be the non-Muslim, but doesn't allow for the non-Muslim to get into a situation where they can create a power base to become a taghut. And maybe that was the objective of Allah sending His various messengers, to come up against the machine each time and to bring the machine down and to level the playing field and to say it's not about one people being dominant over another people. It's about a deen dominating other deens. I mean, the Quran very clearly says Allah sent His messenger with the deen of haqq, that it may dominate over other deens. It didn't say that He may dominate over other emperors or kings or rulers. It said that the deen would dominate. So that seems to me to be saying that it's not actually the people who implement the system that are supposed to dominate. Rather, it's the system that's supposed to dominate. what your thoughts are on that. I mean, this is something I've been thinking about for the past year or
But
two.
people implement systems, don't they?
This is the
But,
system.
the problem, the reason I'm bringing this up, and now obviously I'm going to hear what you have to say about this, because I have my own ideas about this, but the thing that scares me about this is the lapse from what Khalid Abu al-Fadl in a number of his books has written about, the transition from the authoritative into the authoritarian.
Yeah.
That, as they say, the road to hell, or we would say to Jahannam, is paved with good niyyah, good intentions. That you start out saying we want to implement the system of Allah, the deen of Allah, and what happens? You got Muslim supremacists
But that's
going around
why.
practicing takfir, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
earlier.
but that's why the Quran comes with checks and balances. What did Umar bin Khattab say when he became the caliph? He said, how will you judge me? And they said, we'll judge you by the Quran. And he says, what if I leave it? Then the man said, and he said, how will you correct me? And the man stood up with his knife and said, I'll correct you with this. So the Quran is there. The Quran clearly says it is not for the kuffar to have superiority over the believers.
Correct.
For Islam to be dominant means Muslims must implement Islam. But the Quran then tells you, don't go beyond the nizam. Yes, the kuffar are kuffar, but that's not an excuse for you to be tyrannical over them.
Exactly.
The best way is actually, you let them there, leave them there, put them in their little corner there, or wherever they want to be, if they want to live in an oblong or a triangle, but let them be there, and let them look at envy with what you have.